and welcome to Fireside and Fairytale. This is Flosstube number 21 and it's Tuesday the 6th of May now, 2025. It's lovely to see you and I welcome everyone who's watching from wherever you live. It's just great to be able to share with you. And I have to say that I've been having a very, very busy week. I make my own clothes, as you probably gathered. I knit garments and I love to sew my dresses and skirts. And I really like this because you can create your an extension of your own identity on your clothing. It's not shop bought. It's what you've created yourself. It's like an outer skin. Having said that, there certainly was a time in my life when I was racing into a very well-known store here in the UK and buying my clothes that I would really needing to be very presentable for my work. Now in the UK we have what is called private schools, and I had a very mixed education. I was extremely lucky. I went to quite a number of different schools and different types of school, though I would say that the vast majority were what we call girls' schools. They didn't include boys, but what I had at every school was what is called here a school uniform. What did that mean for us? Well, I loved my school uniform. I loved to go to the special shop outfitters and buy all these mounds of clothes. Our poor parents having to cough up for all these items of clothing, including underpants that went over our underpants. We would have other pants that would go over them. In the school colour, it was that rigid. And I went to a school that had a very, very dark navy with a yellow band. I then went to a school that had brown, a dark brown, which was actually my favourite colour of school uniform. And then I went to a school that had cornflower blue. And the school flower was a cornflower, and I've just noticed my first cornflowers out in my garden this morning. And then I went to another school and it again had a dark brown school uniform. We had winter uniform and we had summer uniform. Then the next school was the one that I started when I went back to it, and it also, I have to say, mostly actually was grey. It was a grey overcoat, grey skirt, grey cardigan. I did not like grey at all at the time, though I love it as a colour now, and I'm planning to do a very soft wool grey dress for the late autumn, but we'll see. After grey, I then went to a school that had a bottle green uniform. And at that point, my days of school uniform wearing were over. But I have actually maintained the habit in that I tend to have maybe one or two dresses or a dress and skirt for that particular season, thinking 4 seasons in the year, and then I tend to just keep wearing them. So it's quite interesting to me when I do watch. There is one lady I watch on YouTube, and she has over 200 episodes, and honestly, I've never seen her wear the same thing twice. So it's just a different attitude to clothing. I feel clothing for me is my outer skin, a bit like a pussycat with his coat. So here is my latest work, and that's what's taken up a great deal of my time in the past week, and I will definitely be showing you when I put it all together and chatting more about sewing. And I'll just add that I think I mentioned this before to you, that I did learn how to put garments together at school. 2 different schools that I went to taught that. But that will be for another episode. Now, let's get to samplers. I know a great many of you come to me to watch my sampler stitching, and very little progress this week. I mean, just tiny, just stitches, but I did keep going. So I do want to show you Charlotte Frost. Charlotte Frost 1846 by the Scarlet House. And I am enjoying this. It's on corn tassel 37 count, and I managed to obtain this through 123 stitch, and this is quite a firm weave, so it's lovely to go to a firm weave from time to time. The other 2 samplers I've been working on this week are a much looser weave, so you have to adapt your hand tension to the linen tightness or looseness, and I like that variation. So it rather reminds me of Eastern European designs, and interestingly I came across a program about needlework pieces in the Balkan states, and I was fascinated to see that one of the photographs showed the sort of geranium flower that we have as a motif over and over again in our samplers. So when we say that a sampler design is from a particular country, we really need to bear in mind that these designs, these motifs, are being shared across thousands of miles, and still are to this day. So I'm really enjoying this. The colours are few. If I show you the colours for this, that is Charlotte Frost, yes. I'm using DMC and just keeping them very neat. That's the little needle case for Charlotte Frost, and I'm using DMC, though I think that she does give NPS as an alternative. The next sampler that I've been working on this week that I will show you is, and when I say working, well, that's really rather a euphemism. Merrily, Merrily We Welcome the Spring by Blackbird Designs. And here are, it's on 36 count Oaken by Picture This Plus, and that's what's called for, with an absolutely beautiful array of mostly Weeks Dye Works floss. They're really just gorgeous muted colours with this very strong blue and a rather raspberry red, that one there, that just give it a complete character. The reds are baked apple, I should know by this time. Baked apple, and the other red is raspberry, and I think this is one of the reasons I'm really attracted to this particular sampler. It is because I do love pink and blue, red and blue. I really do. And so we have here, if I can get it out, blue corn and raspberry. Blue corn and raspberry, just lovely, just lovely. A sort of a very steady feel to that. There's a steady feel to that. Not somber, not intense, but somehow or other like you're feeling you're coming home, I think. Or I do when I see these 2 colours together. There's a chime to it. Now, the raspberry is by Weeks Dye Works, but blue corn is by Classic Colourworks. And aren't we fortunate that we can go to different selections of thread, different producers of thread, to be able to choose just what's going to work. Now, of course, the person who chose those colours was the designer, Alma Allen. Alma Allen. Having said that, this is fighting me. It is fighting me, this piece. I'm enjoying it as of last week or the week before. Was the first time I started to enjoy it. As you will know if you've been following me, I've been doing this for a couple of months, and I certainly got the bare outlines done. I went to the bottom left just because it attracted me so much. Got the blue bird done there. It was at this point I realised that there are 5 alphabets, so I'm going to have to start really falling in love with alphabets. But there we are, there are 5. They take up a third of the actual sampler centre. But this is fighting me. It just is fighting me. And if anyone else has this experience where a sampler, you're forever putting your needle in the wrong hole, or your thread is forever snagging, where you're just having one obstacle after another, do let me know. Do let me know. What is the remedy? Do you persevere, or do you lay it aside and hope that it will come around later? I'm not in the habit of, and again, that's my education. If you start something, you finish it. That's probably Scottish as well. If you start something, you finish it. So I'm loath, absolutely loath. I'm sort of not so much loath. I'm determined to start rather than loath to stop. Determined to continue. So anyway, that's that. And for some, that's their favourite, Blackbird. So please don't let me put you off. This is just personal experience. And then the third one, which I had hoped to finish, but then, you know, other things called, is Basket of Cherries, another Blackbird Designs. And this is a very, very cheerful one. It's also a nice contrast to the other two in that it's 2 threads over 2, 32 count, Cocoa by Weeks Dye Works. I'm really enjoying that linen. And there is the Basket of Cherries. It's the series 1 of the Garden Club, and it's designed by Barb Adams. And here we are, and this is where here are the threads. Absolutely juicy selection of threads, juicy, and many, many, many. And if you're prepared to have many colour changes, you don't mind stopping and starting relatively often, then do keep going with this. If you're not in the mood for thread changes, then go to somebody like Charlotte Frost, which is much more sedate and steady. But if you're on for just, you know, a quick snap at stitching, and then you have to dash off and do something else, and this is really ideal. And can I put this up against this? There we are. You see an absolutely beautiful colour selection. And I finished the cherries this morning. I'm really enjoying the basket. It is Smyrna stitch, which is like a giant cross stitch that's going on. It's going to be on all of the basket. So no pressure. I don't know if I'll continue this coming week, or if I'll go back to, I may well go back to Rose Cottage Pin Keep by Stacey Nash, because I'm sort of alternating them, the two of them as my 2 smalls that I'm working on. So there we are with samplers. I have just received my next purchase of samplers in the post box this morning. And so if you like to persevere with me to the end, I will be opening it at the end, and you can see what my next choice is. In the meantime, keeping on the theme of samplers, I thought you would be interested just to hear a little snippet from Margaret Swain's Scottish Embroidery, Medieval to Modern. Now, I have mentioned this book before. Margaret Swain has written a number of absolutely excellent books on embroidery. Her research is absolutely amazing, and I like to read her very much because she comes from a very detached point of view. No political agenda here. She is just going straight into her obvious enthusiasm for the work itself, and that's how these books really should be written. So I'm going to read to you. I'm hoping that you're stitching or knitting as I am speaking, from chapter 8, which is called Scottish Samplers. Plain sewing, hemming, running, seaming and whipping were skills needed by every housewife, though there were some so poor that they had no chance to learn these essential accomplishments unless they became maidservants, where they could be taught by mistress or housekeeper. Until the middle of the 18th century, linen was generally bought by the ell, E-L-L. A Scottish ell was 37 inches or 94 centimetres, and made up at home into sheets, tablecloths, napkins, shirts and shifts, what we would probably call a petticoat. Everyone who could sew helped with the task. In 1598, the wardrobe at Balloch, now Taymouth Castle, contained, among the linen in use, 98 serviettes made by the Lady of New Linings and 3 dozen market with blue silk, blue being spelt B-L-E-W. A century later at Mellerstane, Lady Grizzle Bailey set her maids to spin lint or flax fibre that was woven into sheeting by a weaver and then sent to a bleach field for bleaching. She also bought woven linen by the ell for sheets. Linen damask was tablecloths and serviettes, that's table napkins, was purchased at Inverkeithing Fair in Fife and at other centres. Muslin and calico was bought and made into underwear and nightclothes. In 1695 she paid £48 Scots for Holland for her husband's shirts. It was only in 1740 that she records buying shirts ready-made for her grandson George, Lord Binning, when he went to Oxford as an undergraduate. Not everyone possessed the stores of linen that were needed in large houses such as Balloch and Mellerstane, where tablecloths and napkins were marked in sets and sheets numbered to use in rotation. But anyone who aspired to becoming mistress, or at least maid in a prosperous household, needed to learn how to mark sheets and tablecloths with fine cross-stitch. Moreover, while making a cross-stitch alphabet upon a sampler, a little girl was also learning her letters and numbers. A sampler at Blair Castle shows how Catherine Walker, aged 6, learned her multiplication tables in addition to neat cross-stitch, which is absolutely delightful. And my goodness, I would have wanted to learn my multiplication tables this way as well, though that would have taken rather a lot of time, I think. There they are. Maybe somebody wants to do that. I don't know. Catherine Walker, age 6. Wow. So all the way from 1, obviously, to 144, because we didn't go over to decimal and decimalisation. I think it was into the 1980s before we did that. So samplers were used for other purposes than learning marking stitch. Not all of them were made by children. Some record patterns collected by an adult in the same way as cookery recipes. There are, of course, many samplers made by adults in Scotland as well as in England, bearing patterns worked in the soft Berlin wools popular in the 19th century. These are often on long, narrow strips, trial pieces to work out a colour combination or stitch. By no means all of them were in cross-stitch, nor are all the designs Victorian. They often include repeating patterns of a century earlier, perhaps copied from an old chair cover. And as I was pointing out at the beginning of this episode, these motifs would have spread from hundreds and hundreds of miles away and across a great many countries. And I think that's one of the absolute fascinations when we get into the background to textiles and threads, that you do learn about the history and the geography of our wonderful. As some of you will know, I also love to watercolour, and I have been building up this year something that I've meant to be doing, have meant to do for a number of years, and finally I have had the time and the opportunity to do it in 2025, and this is to make a month journal with watercolour of flowers going from month to month. And so I thought I'd just pop this in just now. It does relate to needlework, because I do also make some of my watercolour flowers into embroidery, and I do have an episode actually devoted to that. So for the month of May, here we are in May, and I am at Apple Tree Cottage, and I had 2 apple trees at one point, or the property did. We just have one now, the other died, but we still have the old trunk of it, which is a lovely feature in the garden. And there is the apple blossom, which is now out beautifully in the garden on my apple tree. Very, very pretty. And I have also added one of my favourite flowers, which is columbine or aquilegia, and it just sprouts up all over the place in my garden, and I have them popping up in quite unexpected flower beds this year, but they're staying because I just love them. They're just coming out now. This is the first flower that's come out, and some of them are pink and yellow, and because they're sort of native to the garden, I just wouldn't be without them. They're just beautiful. So a watercolor going straight direct to nature, which is what I do like to do. I do follow John Ruskin and his teaching that truth to nature is very important. That was his teaching. And I agree with that, because I think that you pick up the essence of the flower or whatever you are painting by close observation. What we do with it afterwards, of course, it can remove rather from that starting point. That's absolutely fine. And that has produced some absolutely wonderful art. Then we go from fine art through into design, and there's just this lovely gradation as people come in with their own ways of adjusting what they have perceived, or in some cases people will go to their memory and their imagination. And one of the artists that I truly do admire is a lady called Jessie Marion King, and she was a Scottish artist in the 19th and early 20th century. I just absolutely love her work. She was criticised evidently by a Frenchman for not going directly to nature and to using her imagination, but she was simply at this end of the whole gradation as far as I'm concerned, and of course she would have looked originally at nature. So when we come to embroidery design, of course, there is stylization. And one of the absolute lovely goddesses of needlework, that's probably the wrong word, but still, was May Morris, and she was the daughter of William Morris, the Welsh-English, I say Welsh because I think his family was originally Welsh, but he was born in Walthamstow in east of London, and from a very wealthy family, and he used his money to build up his, and with his wife Jane Morris, build up their idea of design and embroidery. So so much of them, I will sort of circumnavigate that wonderful couple, really fascinating English couple, and be going to look at their daughter May Morris just for a minute. I have shown you this book before, highly recommend it. It's just a delight to come back to this book, to look at it, and to learn from it as well. And look, here we are, the tracing paper of the design. Now, I went to May Morris late in life. I only discovered her late in my life, maybe at the very most 10 years ago, at the very most. So I was well into my into my 7th decade when I came across May, and it was like greeting an old friend, because so much of what she was doing was what I was doing. And I've no idea of why that should be. I certainly wasn't influenced by her in that I was already producing things. I think it's more the spirit of the age. And anyway, here we are, and I've gone and lost the page. So she had produced her own clothes and embroidered on them. And there are photographs of her sitting in her dresses, and she produced embroideries for gloves, and there's baby mittens, and also she had a yoke that she produced, I think probably for a summer dress, and I can't find it. Well, I will find it for you. And so I thought, right, I'm just going to see what it feels like. Now, I do this with painting. I was going to the Royal Scottish, the Museum of Scotland by the Royal Scottish Academy, and I was very fortunate. I was invited to go and do copies of some of the oil paintings there. And I did a copy of a Raphael, and among others. And I found that if you copy a painting, you get underneath the surface and you start to understand the artist. So I thought I would do this with May and actually copy one of her designs that she used. It'll be in the section on costumes. To see what she felt like as she was doing it, and to go along with her stitching narrative. So dress and costume 174, so I'm not looking back far enough. And so I did actually trace out one of her designs. She did jewellery as well. Amazing lady, very, very gifted. And here we are. That's the design, and I traced it off. That, by the way, is one of the dresses that are embroidered. They did love doing their own embroidered clothing. There's a dress she made, absolutely beautiful. That's silk. So I copied that, having found it, traced it off. And there's the tracing. And wobbled a bit. It's not absolutely directly the actual copy, but it's pretty close. And it was doing what I wanted it to do, which was to give me a feel for her design. The way that her lines flowed, just how the whole of the curve felt when I was doing that. She does have a little treatise on embroidery design, which you can still obtain. Let me see if I can show you this. It's going to drop down. And I stitched it last summer. This is what I did last summer. And I used my own colourway. And that is actually a yoke. You would then cut it out, potentially for a night dress, something like that. And I learned a great deal. And what I learned was that I wouldn't be following her particularly too much longer. I found quite a lot of it rather tedious, particularly her stems, which you do twice as an outline. Naturally for me, it was a completely different embroiderer of the time, and someone who was, surprise, surprise, Scottish, seemed to be rather more in my blood. And I will be going to that lady in the next episode, because I'm applying something of her design to this dress. So come back for that, keeping you tantalized. Now, that is no criticism of Mae Morris at all. I absolutely love her work, and as I say, there were things that she has done that are very, very similar to what I was doing. So because I lived my life between Scotland and England back and forward a great deal, though I've also lived abroad, I'm sure I picked up threads and influences subliminally from both countries, which of course is a great advantage. So here we are with a little bit of embroidery. I have not dug out the initial watercolour. I do have the watercolour as a photograph on Instagram. If you scroll back down through my Instagram account, you will eventually find watercolours of cornflowers. And I stitched this a number of years ago. That is how it should go. This is my design from my watercolour of rosebuds and of cornflowers. And as you can see, I'm needing to catch up with myself. That's the other side. So I did match up the two. They do go together. And then lots of little bits. That's a pocket cover. Can you guess what this is? Another section there. Can you guess what this is? Another pocket. And the final piece, which is a sort of a side section, and not the back. There's no back on this. So what is it? What is this? It is our waistcoat. The waistcoat. And that is inspired by these amazing 18th century men's embroidered waistcoats. And so that is something that I have done the embroidery for. And I think I used a simplicity pattern actually for the waistcoat. I got stuck because I couldn't find a fabric that would work for me for the back. So it got left behind in a box. I've dug it out now, and that will probably be something I revisit and have a go at getting fabric for the back, which should be contrasting, and then actually getting together, and let alone actually wearing it. So here we are finally at my last little bit of the episode, which is to open up the latest sampler purchase. And here we are now. I do use, I use Fobbles, F-O-B-B-L-E-S. I use Peakside Needleworks. I use the Patchwork Rabbit. I use Lakeside. And so don't think I'm always going to America. I do also patronize British, well, really English outlets. But anyway, this came this morning from 123 Stitch, which is American, and I really went there because I could get many of the things at the one go. And I can't quite, I remember the pattern, I can't remember what else I've actually purchased in this, so this will be interesting just to see what has come in the post. Beautifully wrapped, and here we are, and here we are. It is, surprise, surprise, another Blackbird, and to go with the season, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? There's a sampler on the back, and a delightful little pin cushion, which I do know Nicole of Nicole's Needlework has done. And what have I purchased here? Let's see. Now, I do have quite a number of thread anyway in my collection. This is sarsaparilla, pomegranate and burlap. I already had burlap for something else, but I haven't used pomegranate or sarsaparilla, which is an amazing colour. A sort of copper colour. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? That's just wonderful. They call for Winter's Brew. Winter's Brew, 32 count by R&R Reproduction. I think they usually use, yes, the one linen for the book. They'll advocate you just one for the whole book. That's right. So 32 count. Sometime here it's called Winter Brew, and then at on the start page it's called Winter's Brew. Muddle. Just absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I shall see if I can obtain 32 count Winter's Brew. If not, I do have other alternatives in my drawer, so we'll just see how we go. And this is something you're going to have to wait to see what I choose, and anticipate that. So much to talk about, so much to do, but certainly in the coming week what I do plan to do is to complete my my latest dress for the summer, and there's quite a lot of interest and reference to lovely needlewomen and designers in the past, artists as well in the past, just through stitching a garment for ourselves. So lots of ideas. I do hope you've been inspired by something of quite a mix this week. Have a great week stitching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.